Episode 8: Political Extremism and Violence in the Weimar Republic between 1919 and 1923. Any and all information covered in this audiobook originated from the 8th chapter of the First Germany booklet. Parties of the extreme left and the extreme right fought elections but also used their armed paramilitary squads to attack their opponents. Political violence became the norm. However, what was the challenge from the left? The Spartakists aimed for a communist revolution in Germany. They believed that the November 1918 revolution had been betrayed by Ebert and the SPD. They and their heirs, the KPD, attempted a number of armed revolts. The Spartakists staged an armed uprising in Berlin in January 1919, which was brutally put down by the Army and Free Corps. In March 1919, the Spartakists attempted another armed rising in Berlin, and a communist government was set up in Bavaria. Both were suppressed. In March 1920, a general strike in Berlin helped to defeat the Kapp Putsch. See below. Following this, the KGB formed a Red Army and seized control of the Ruhr, leading to armed clashes with the Army and Free Corps. Other short-lived left-wing revolts in 1920 occurred in Halle, Dresden, Saxony, and Thuringia. In March 1921, the KPD tried to stage a revolution, beginning with a rising in Saxony. Disruption spread to the Ruhr and Hamburg, but the risings were crushed. In 1923, during the hyperinflation crisis, a wave of strikes occurred in Saxony and Hamburg. All of these revolts failed or were ruthlessly crushed, but they engendered a fear of communism among the middle classes, driving many to support right-wing parties. Similarly, what was the challenge from the right? There were many right-wing nationalist groups that were hostile to the Republic, but did not all share the same objectives. Nationalist ideas had strong support among the old conservatives, landowners, industrialists, military officers, civil servants and judges, but also had some popular support, especially from ex-soldiers. Many of these ex-soldiers joined paramilitary groups such as the Patriotic Leagues, which carried out assassinations of left-wing opponents. There were also 2 attempts by right-wing nationalists to overthrow the Republic. There were also many political assassinations. The Patriotic Leagues, formed from ex-Free Corps units and having the support of officers in the German army, were dedicated to killing left-wing politicians and those associated with signing the Treaty of Versailles. Between 1919 and 1923, they carried out 354 political assassinations. In the same period, the left killed 22 of their opponents. Although the law was strengthened in 1922 to ban extremist organizations and severely punish political assassins, right-wing judges did not apply the law evenly. Only 1 right-wing assassin was executed in this period, compared to 10 left-wing murderers. The most high-profile victims of political assassinations were Hugo Hasey, leader of the USPD, gunned down in front of the Reichstag building in October 1919. Matthias Erzberger, who had led the German delegation to Versailles, shot in August 1921. Walther Rathenau, the foreign minister who had participated in the signing of the armistice in the Versailles Treaty, shot in June 1922. Then you have the Kapp Putsch. This was an armed revolt in Berlin which took place in March 1920, which was against the government and led by Free Corps units. The army was ordered to disband 2 Free Corps units, according to the terms of the Treaty of Versailles in February 1920. General Luttwitz refused to disband 1 unit and marched his troops to Berlin. Luttwitz was supported by Wolfgang Kapp, a DNVP deputy in the Reichstag who attempted to overthrow the elected government. Ebert's government withdrew to Dresden for safety and ordered the army to crush the Putsch, which its commanders refused to do. The Putsch collapsed after 4 days. It had failed to win widespread support. Its leaders were divided, civil servants refused to obey its orders, and trade unions in Berlin organized a general strike. The Kapp Putsch revealed the depth of hostility towards the Republic among army officers and among the judges who showed leniency towards those arrested in the aftermath of the Putsch. The Republic survived, but the putsch illustrated that its foundations were weak. Finally, we come to the Munich Putsch. The Beer Hall Putsch in Munich in November 1923 was an attempt by the small NSDAP, otherwise known as the Nazi Party, and led by Adolf Hitler, to seize power in Bavaria and lead a march on Berlin to overthrow the government. Several factors contributed to this attempted putsch. Number one, the occupation of the Ruhr by French and Belgian forces in 1923 resulted in a wave of anti-French feeling and an unusual degree of national unity. However, when the government abandoned the policy of passive resistance to the occupation in September, the nationalist right was outraged by what they saw as an act of betrayal. Number two, many middle-class people who had always believed in the virtues of hard work, careful spending and saving, had their values and confidence in the future shattered by the hyperinflation crisis. Hyperinflation therefore damaged middle-class confidence in the government and the Republic as a whole. Number three, in Bavaria, a right-wing state government declared a state of emergency and nationalists agitated for a march on Berlin to overthrow the federal government. On 8 November 1923, Hitler and his stormtroopers, the SA, took over a Munich beer hall where a right-wing political meeting was taking place and forced the state commissioner, von Kahr, and the local army commander, von Lossow, to agree to join a march on Berlin. The putsch failed because Hitler failed to secure the support of the police and the army commander changed sides. A Nazi march through Munich on 9 November was fired on by the police, and Hitler was arrested. The Nazis were banned and Hitler imprisoned, but only for 9 months. There were also several problems with coalition governments. First of all, there were 10 coalition cabinets between February 1919 and November 1923. Only one lasted more than a year. This instability was due to a number of factors. Number one, under proportional representation, many small parties gained representation in the Reichstag. Number two, no one party ever gained enough seats to command a majority in the Reichstag. Number three, many parties of the left and right were dedicated to the overthrow of the Weimar Republic. Number four, in a time of social and political upheaval, society became more polarized and more extreme parties on the left and the right gained support. Number five, the onus was on moderate pro-Republic parties to compromise and work together to ensure stable coalitions. They frequently failed to do this, especially in the face of unprecedented problems. In the light of the ultimate collapse of the Weimar Republic, it is tempting to look to this period for the roots of its eventual demise and reach the conclusion that the Weimar Republic was a republic without republicans. From this perspective, the threats posed by extremists on both the right and left to discredit and ultimately destroy the Republican institutions would be seen as extremely serious, and the Weimar Republic always on precarious ground. The instability of coalitions and frequent changes of government would also be stressed. One could effectively argue that there was turmoil within Germany between 1918 and 1923. In 1917, there was a revolution in Russia. In August 1920, the Red Army advanced on Warsaw. In March 1921, French and Belgian troops occupied Duisburg, Dusseldorf, and Ruhr. In January 1923, the Ruhr was invaded by 60,000 French and Belgian troops. We will now look at a timeline of the revolts made by the left wing between 1918 and 1923. Between October and November in 1918, sailors and soldiers, mutiny and workers protest in Kiel, Bremerhaven, Berlin, Munich and other towns. Worker councils are subsequently created. In November 1918, a Bavarian Republic is proclaimed. In January 1918, there is the Berlin Spartacist Rising and a Workers' Council's Republic is declared in Bremen. In March 1919, 1,200 workers are killed in the Berlin Spartacist Rising. A Soviet republic is also declared in Bavaria. In April, a strike wave engulfs the Ruhr and Halle. In March 1930, and in reaction to the Kapp Putsch, the Communists formed the Ruhr Army of 50,000 workers to resist the pro-Putsch army and Freikorps. It seizes control of the Ruhr in another revolutionary wave. It was the largest working-class revolt of this time period. Some want to set up a Soviet republic with the workers' militia, but protesters are split by government concessions. The army obeys Ebert and crushes the rising with the help of some Freikorps who had been involved in the Kapp Putsch. Over 1,000 workers and 250 police and soldiers were killed. In April 1920, disturbances in Saxony and Thuringia are suppressed. Later in December, the USPE votes to join the KPD. In March 1921, the KPD and Comintern support a rising in Merseburg that has started prematurely. They hope it will act as a catalyst for a general revolution. Supporting strikes in Hamburg and the Ruhr are crushed by police. 145 left dead. Between summer and autumn of 1921, there is a major strike wave. The economic collapse encourages the KPD and Comintern to organize a German October. This is based on Saxony, which has an SPD and KPD-led government. On the 20th of October 1921, Reich troops overthrow the Saxon government. The left wing are disunity weakened by the resistance. On the 23rd of October 1923, there is a two-day rising in Hamburg that is easily suppressed. Others argue that, in fact, the threats to the Weimar Republic, particularly the threat from the left, was exaggerated. Some historians point to the continuous presence and effort in the coalitions of the DVP and Centre Party. The efforts at rapprochement and willingness, for instance, of the Centre Party to go beyond their narrow basis, particularly as the Catholic Party.